Hello, everyone. My name is X, and I'm the Environmental Justice Organizer for Clean Water Action. Here in New Jersey, my work focuses on advocating for policies and initiatives that ensure a healthier, safer environment for communities most impacted by pollution and environmental inequities. So today, I am thrilled to sit down with Marcha Chaudry, the founder of the Equity and Wellness Collaborative and an advisory member on the Non-Toxic Black Beauty Project, which is housed under the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. So Marcha is a leading voice in the fight for beauty justice and equity, and I am so excited to be sitting here. So, Marcha, do you mind going a little bit into detail more about yourself and then the work you do?
Yeah, thank you, Ax. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here too. So, I am the founder of the Equity and Wellness Collaborative, EWC, and I assist beauty and wellness businesses with legal and regulatory compliance. So, all things compliance, MOCRA related. And I also work with nonprofits in an advisory role, as well as program development and grant writing too.
Awesome. Awesome. So with that, we can get into the questions. So beauty justice is a growing industry aimed at addressing the inequities in the beauty industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about what beauty justice means to you and how your career led you to this work?
Yeah. So for me, beauty justice means creating an industry where everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, gender identity, has equal access to safe and inclusive and non-toxic products. It's about dismantling harm, the harmful norms, and addressing systematic inequities that disproportionately harm communities of color. And in my career, my path has been deeply rooted in public health, advocacy, policy, through my work on Capitol Hill, through working in nonprofit, and also lobbying in Congress as well, in the FDA. I've firsthand seen how policies or the lack of policies can either protect or can harm vulnerable populations. And so those experiences inspired me to focus on beauty justice as a way to merge my passion for equity and also my experience with tangible policy changes to consumer safety.
No, I love that. I love that whole answer.
Mhm.
And yeah, and you definitely have done a lot of work in this area. I know you were telling me at one point you testified in front of Congress for beauty justice. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it feels like so long ago now. But yes, I testified alongside other advocacy groups at the time. There was EWG, Beauty Counter, and my testimony focused on how ingredients in products can be harmful to Black and Brown women and girls. And at the time, I'd built up rapport with the congressional staff. I'd been lobbying on the issue for several months, having meetings back to back with the entire Energy Commerce Committee. And so when I was asked to testify, I was honored, but I also felt like this huge sense of responsibility given there had been zero regulation on cosmetics in over 80 years at the time. So it was a really powerful experience. I'm still am very passionate about the issue because I created a whole business afterwards. But I really enjoyed that work and just being able to really understand the intricacies of policy development as a whole.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And you touched on a little bit in your last response about like the disparities and health impacts. From a health and environmental justice perspective, how are Black women and other people of color disproportionately affected? And what are some systemic issues that contribute to that?
Yeah, so from a health and environmental justice perspective, Black women and people of color often face disproportionate exposure to harmful chemicals and beauty products marketed to them. Products like relaxers, I know we've heard, and currently there are a lot of lawsuits going on in that world. And certain cosmetics that contain, or may contain, I should say, EDCs, which are endocrine disrupting chemicals, and carcinogens and other chemicals at higher rates. And the problem stems from issues like inadequate regulation, marketing of toxic or non clean or harmful products, lack of accessible products, safer, lack of safer alternatives. So additionally, the cultural beauty standards perpetuated the use of these products and further exacerbated health, or exacerbate, I should say, health disparities. So it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think this is not just a public health issue, it's also a justice issue.
For sure, for sure. So it seems like a lot of things in your personal and professional life kind of led you to this, and just seeing the patterns and the inequities. I'm wondering if there are any like pivotal experiences in your life or career that inspire you to do this work and specifically start the Equity and Wellness Collaborative.
Yeah, I mean, so many things just from being, a young Black girl who saw the products that are now in lawsuits being marketed to me. I remember seeing them, like seeing the packaging and, begging my mom to purchase the products and use them. And of course, at the time, and I think in my generation, I'm a millennial, a lot of our parents were not necessarily educated on, products that were marketed to us.
Yeah.
Even now in 2024, a lot of people think that products that are marketed are FDA approved. The FDA does not approve products in 2024 in the US. No, that does not happen. And so there were several pivotal experiences just growing up and just being someone who was always fascinated and interested in beauty and skincare and all the things, right? And so, and then early in my career, I worked in women's health and policy, and I had the chance to develop and build a cosmetic policy program at the National Women's Health Network. That experience really helped me to hone in on those advocacy skills and also become a leader in the coalition in the national work we were doing as consumer advocates at the time. So those were like two turning points. I want to say another one came when MOCRA was passed, and this law finally, being passed was a cumulative effort of a lot of different consumer advocates like myself and others who, were pushing for more regulation. And so when that was passed, that definitely, helped me to focus in on what can I do to assist businesses now. And so being that I'm intimately familiar with the policy, I'm able to assist businesses with compliance at a deeper level.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely want to get to what you do at EWC next. But I'm just wondering, could you say a little more for people who aren't familiar with MOCRA, like what it does, how it got there, just the history?
Yeah, so MOCRA is the Modernization of the Cosmetic Regulation Act, and it was passed in 2022. And some of the regulations went into effect last year. The Modernization of Cosmetic Regulation Act, it has different regulations from product listing, facility registration, adverse event reporting for consumer safety, also some updated labeling requirements as well. I think it's a good step forward. We definitely need more regulation, but it's the first regulation in over 100 years in the cosmetic space.
Thank you. Yeah, and with that, I want to turn it to your work at EWC and how you, get facilities moving in the right direction to comply with MOCRA. I'm wondering, can you share more about the mission and the goals of EWC, and what does your work with facilities look like?
Yeah. So the mission of EWC is to advance equity, well-being, and public health by guiding businesses and nonprofits, in achieving legal compliance, transparency, and inclusivity. And my work is very legal and regulatory and technical with the businesses. So I do FDA listings, I do FDA facility registration for US companies, for foreign companies. I also do label and ingredient review. So assessing the ingredients and making sure that they're compliant with all the different states that have restrictions. And sometimes, or some states have restrictions where it may require a disclosure on the label. So I'm making sure that the product labeling and what's in the product is compliant with the laws. And I also have a certification program, and that is certifying products based on compliance, safety, efficacy, transparency. And then there's another pillar, which is inclusivity, which is one of my passions, of course, and my background. And so certifying Black and Brown owned brands and products marketed to those brands for those different core pillars as well. And I also work with nonprofits. I have to say that because it's very comprehensive, given that I came from a background of consumer advocacy. So I still have very strong network and relationships with the nonprofit organizations. And so I do grant writing and program impact development for different campaigns in the consumer policy space in beauty and health and wellness.
Awesome. Very wraparound program. Yeah, I was wondering, can you talk more about the emphasis on gearing the EWC towards Black-owned brands? Is there like a gap you saw in certain regulations?
Well, in general, like I mentioned before, there isn't a pre-market approval, and the FDA does not approve products. So if I or if anyone wants to create a product and start selling it tomorrow, they can do so. They can just set up a website, set up the product, or develop the product and start selling it. And so there's no kind of safety assessment going on, compliance assessment. And so there are some products in the market that are harmful, that have found to be harmful from independent labs and that are just harmful. And unfortunately, Black women are hit harder, I should say, or suffer the burden from that because the rate at which we use products, also the different types of products we use. There have been found, heavy or different harmful chemicals in hair products, for example, and Black women tend to use more hair products and more specific products than other communities. And so there are multiple layers for which this problem occurs to certain communities.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. And with that, and obviously working, grant writing for nonprofits, there's, an investment in the community aspect along with your work. I'm wondering, what role do you think community members and local advocates play in safer beauty standards?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the advocacy is essential in pushing for grassroots advocacy is essential in pushing for safer beauty standards. Community members, local advocates can amplify the voices of the impacted or the most vulnerable groups impacted by these harmful cosmetic products, right? Because consumers, in 2024, I still come across consumers, even just friends, family, who just don't know or don't understand the lack of regulation or that certain products are harmful. And so organizations that participate in consumer advocacy and grassroots advocacy, you know, those efforts drive awareness and educate consumers about the pressures, and they educate consumers, and then they pressure the brands to adopt safer, equitable practices. So there is an effect to having that kind of community and that education.
Thank you. And with that, my last question for you, looking ahead, what does the future of beauty justice look like for you specifically? And are there any emerging trends, policies, or collaborations that give you hope for change in the industry?
Yeah, that's a big question. I think the future of beauty justice is rooted in systematic change, or systemic change, I should say, and collaboration and innovation. I'm seeing a lot more groups come together from throughout the industry, from retailers to some of the advocacy groups, and kind of form partnerships around clean beauty, for example, and in other areas that might protect consumers. I really like that, and I'm happy to be a part of some of these movements, sort of in the background, through whether through advising some of the impact campaigns, but I like to see the collaboration between advocacy groups, researchers, ethical brands, and it really gives me hope for some kind of change. And also the grassroots work that you're doing, that others are doing, to sort of raise their awareness for consumers, because they are often the most uneducated in this space.
Awesome. That was great. Well,
I
thank
answer the
you,
question
Marcia.
completely?
No, that was like amazing. I
Oh,
think
okay.
just acknowledging, the fact that one, it's ever changing, and two, we need to do the work. I think that's the first step. Like, we need to be telling our family members, our friends, that this stuff is actually harming us. And I think systemic change and a cultural shift in the products we use and why we use them. So, like, bringing it back to those beauty standards that, push the demand for certain products that have these chemicals as integral parts of making them work. So, yeah, it's really important for just, a shift. So, yeah,
Yes.
thank
I do
you.
want to say that ultimately I envision an industry where safety, sustainability, inclusivity are the norm. It's not like this exception where it's only some specific brands, but it's a standard and a norm.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, that's part of the important work you're doing. I'm so glad organizations like EWC exist, because honestly, it really does take like independent individuals passionate about the issue to get it to change. Like, I don't know, we can make regulations, but how we're following them is up to, the follow through of community members and holding industry accountable for what they put out there. So, very important work you're doing. Thank you so much, Marcha, for your insights and just shedding light on this issue. What you're doing at EWC, it's inspiring work, truly. And for those who want to learn more, you can definitely visit either the Clean Water Action website to learn a little bit more about Marcha, or directly the EWC website. Is that what it's called? EWC.org?
It's equitywellness.org.
Equitywellness.org. Awesome. And I will put a link to that anywhere this goes up as well.